Welcome, welcome, and welcome, and
Welcome back.
Fivefold Understanding YouTube variety channel. Around here, we call it like we see it. That's right. And you, right there, you clicked on the right video if you're a fan of Daredevil. You clicked on the right video if you're a fan of Daredevil Netflix. And you definitely clicked on the right video if you absolutely hate Daredevil Netflix and the snooze fest that was Daredevil Netflix. And definitely stay tuned to this video, especially if you're either a fan of Netflix or like me, maybe a Netflix hater who's sick of their lying pomposity, hidden in plain sight, sigil magic, and all their esoteric paganism, downright Luciferianism from their symbolic spell casting. And as you can see here from my creator studio, got to be careful what you say when you talk about Netflix, especially their secret agenda that they got going. Because you see, is this right here in the middle of your screen? When you do, yeah, that right there happens. You get blocked worldwide. You know, there's just certain people you can't talk about. So we're going to save an addendum to that for a future video. And then in the meantime, you should throw me a sub. That way you can see those videos before Netflix flags them and they delete them for good. So, with all that being said, on today's docket, Netflix's Daredevil in particular, and I'm going to prove you how chicken shit scared they are of the villains, and why a lot of us out there can't get through more than 2 episodes without falling asleep, when that should nowhere be the case, concerning the fact we're dealing with one of Marvel's richest mythologies, and in my opinion, richest Silver Age mythology, especially when you want to talk about villainy, because no rogues gallery in the Marvel universe, including Spider-Man's, is quite as good as Daredevil's. All right? And we're going to break this whole thing down. But recently, Daredevil made the news, and that's what because as you can see right here, Daredevil's Vincent D'Onofrio encourages fans to sign this Save the Daredevil petition. Okay? When that's the last thing you want to do with this show. The writers and the people behind it need to be brought out back behind the shed. Okay? Proverbially speaking. And this Vincent D'Onofrio, if you don't know who he is and you're just a fan of Daredevil, well, he plays the Kingpin, okay? A much highly, critically acclaimed Kingpin, which makes absolutely no sense because the character he plays is nothing like the real Kingpin, okay? When people think of the visual Kingpin, you think of a walking king-size mattress, okay? That's what you think of when you think of the Kingpin. He's a strategic criminal mastermind. And what does the show give us? The Netflix show in 39 episodes, the first season and the third season, where they basically repeat this just downright retarded Kingpin arc. Both times he kills a guy in the back seat of his car or whatever that's about, because that's the only crime Kingpin commits in the show. Because the Kingpin of the Daredevil show, right here, you can see in this ugly cast we're going to talk about, this gentleman right here, he doesn't play this strategic, humorous, full of character, criminal, badass mastermind, a hardy guy that, you know, you don't want nothing to do with. No, this guy plays this almost weird, non-social, obsessive compulsive disorder weirdo who's got all the same suits lined up, and he makes eggs all weird, and everything is clean and kosher, and he gives people these weird looks like he's mentally challenged or something. Yeah, well, that guy who plays that Kingpin, Vincent D'Onofrio, is asking for the fans to recently sign this petition. That's right. It says right here, fans have been campaigning to save Daredevil ever since the cancellation was first announced, which was a few months ago, and I applauded, inciting a major petition that continues to leverage support for the series in hopes that Netflix, Disney, or Marvel will do something to save the series. This series doesn't need to be saved. The whole thing needs to be revamped and relaunched. Sure, you can maybe keep Matt or something, and I'm going to get into it right now. And if you like highly detailed 4K imagery, we're going to get a lot of that too. But I'm going to start right here. The Daredevil cast is ugly, and I mean ugly to the bone. Damn near every person on the show. Where do I even begin with this one? Granted, you need some ugly characters because you're dealing with, the underbelly of society and whatnot. So to a degree, it makes a lot of sense. But for it to go like 40 episodes with the ugly mugs of people, and I know what everybody's thinking. The girl that plays Karen Page is hot. No. Sorry. Let me tell you something. If it looks like a duck, looks like it waddles like a duck, guess what? Yeah, it's an ugly duckling, okay? Let me tell you something. This moon face, foundation-filled, pancake makeup wearing to disguise her witch's warts is ugly as it gets, all right? And sure, I know there's a couple scenes here and there where, and we'll get to this dude, we'll get to Foggy, but and even look at the dress Karen wears here. I mean, this thing is ugly as can be. I don't think my grandma would even want to wear something like that. This is downstairs, early Victorian house cleaning attire. And, yeah, she looks good here and there, but as they say, the sun shines on a dog's ass. Look at her right there. Now, you tell me, seriously, you tell me, if she asked for your number, would you give it to her? No, I don't think you would, and I'll tell you why. Because just like my grandpa said, if you want to know if a broad is really beautiful, try to picture her or get her without her makeup on, and then picture her bald. Okay? You don't want nothing to do with this monster right here. Or this monster either. Look at that forehead. Looking like a moon crater. I mean, for a couple of blondes, you think Netflix could have went out of their way to get us a couple of decent-looking girls. Instead of these, just both of them fell off the ugly tree and got smacked back and forth by every branch, as they fell down. And Foggy, this guy is a pit bull. And you know what? He might be a pit bull, but he looks like a bulldog with freckles and long red hair. I mean, this dude is ugly as it gets also. Not to mention characters like Madame Gao. Could they have found an uglier old Asian woman to be the heroine queen of everything? Just, absolutely unbelievable bullshit. Just like Daredevil himself, and we're going to get into that. And for an ugly cast, isn't it kind of uncanny that probably the best looking character outside of the Night Nurse is the guy that plays the Punisher? I mean, come on. Even a bloody Punisher is still one of the better looking characters on the show. And that should be the last case with this, arsenal, sophisticated, smoky pool room, cigar chewing, badass for the most part. And what's funny, when I was looking at this image here, does this look familiar to anybody? And I was wondering, maybe this is why he was casted. He looks just like the John Romita Jr. version of Frank Miller from Punisher Warzone. And as I understand it, along with some of the Garth Ennis material, Punisher Warzone, the John Romita illustrated run, is one of the better Punisher runs to read. And if it looks familiar to any noob, some of the illustrations here, like the bullets flying like that, maybe even the Uzi. Like I said, John Romita Jr. did the art. He also recently did Silencer for DC Comics, which was kind of hot and had a little bit of a following. I don't know 6 months back or something in the summer of 2017 when Silencer came out for DC. It was the same artist. Anyhow, like I said, ugly cast, and this dude ain't doing that ugly cast any favors either. And what's really foul is the villains here, okay? Absolutely, I don't even know how to put it actually into words, how disgusted I am by what they did with this show as far as Daredevil in respect to the mythology and the villains that represent it and our, the framework, architecture that supports the Daredevil brand. And this is one of the main villains for the first season? Are you kidding me? You're going to put this guy on center stage in the limelight? this Wesley chump, who's such a no-name nobody as far as Marvel characters are concerned, that James Wesley shares a Wikipedia page with Wendigo and the Western Kid, and Netflix feels it pertinent to limelight this guy on center stage? Are you kidding me?
Welcome back.
Meanwhile, they put the owl, Leland Owlsley, as the accountant or attorney, when the whole time I'm sitting here watching the first season of this show thinking, he must be the dad of the real Owlsley. You know, the occult, conspiratorial, criminal mastermind nutcase. But, oh no, Netflix, that's Leland Owlsley, the attorney. You know, and they want to try to keep it real world or whatever the hell they were trying to do. That's what I was saying. Daredevil, the character, as far as hero archetypes are concerned anyhow, is the single most far-fetched out of all the superheroes, period. He's a blind guy who fights numerous villains like he's two Bruce Lees synthesized into the same body on speed, meanwhile using a radar sense like rain and tapping his pole against buildings to pick up reflections that somehow illustrate a sense of his surrounding. I mean, it's so far-fetched it couldn't be any more far-fetched. And that's what makes the character and the mythology so great. So don't try to put it in the real world or whatever the hell they were trying to do. Netflix's Daredevil is absolutely delusional. Let me tell you something. Netflix's delusional, dysfunctional, downtrodden, downright disparaging, and definitively depressing Daredevil is absolutely derelict. How's that? Okay? And you guys want to petition for it to save the show? Whatever happened to the petition? Fix Daredevil or quit doing the bullshit that you're doing. People are falling asleep watching this show. Where are the villains? Oh, that's right. They're right here. These are the main focal points for villainy throughout the, the first 28 episodes or whatever it is of Daredevil. This is what you guys did? I mean, let me tell you something. There's a reason, okay? There's a reason memes like this exist, all right? And I laughed so hard when I first seen this, because could this be more true? And I was like, at least there's a couple other people out there that, you know, feel the way I feel and agree with me on this, right? You don't take a character like Melvin Potter, who's really the gladiator, and stick him behind a sewing machine for, 40 episodes. Are you out of your mind? Oh, we're trying to build up the character. Come on now. You didn't even need to get through 13 episodes of that first season snooze fest, and you could have brought us the gladiator. But oh no, they're worried about giving us characters like Sammy Silky or whatever the hell this bullshit was about. Some no-name loser who first appeared in Alex Maleev, and I'm guessing, Bendis's run. Oh yeah, it's pretty good, but it's nothing compared to the Brubaker run. It's nothing compared to the original Frank Miller run. It's nothing compared to the original Stan Lee run and all the villains that built up Daredevil into who he became and why the mythology is so strong and why people love it so much. And we're going to get into that right now. Because as Netflix wants to give us absolute shit like this, just jag-offs and pointlessness, when we could have been given this right here, Deathstalker. Look at this dude. Is he not awesome or what? Even if you're doing your real world bullshit, you still could have brought a character like this into play. You could have switched his intangibility powers or whatever he's got going on a little bit. But just look how cool it is to have a dude like this, Deathstalker, stalking the shadows, who first appeared, this template anyhow, in Frank Miller's very first Daredevil issue that he illustrated. I want to see he illustrated his first 9 comics before he took over as both illustrator and writer. And that's over here on the right side, Daredevil 158. But why didn't they bring this character into the fold? Likely the same reason they didn't bring this character into the fold. You got 2 guys sitting on the bench screaming, "Put me in, coach, put me in." And they don't even look at the mythology period. They're too busy giving us absolute cannon fodder with a cast like this. No boo. I'll bet you here's another guy down here on the right who shares a Wikipedia page. That's how insignificant of a character he was. To have a build up to Daredevil fighting him, just some more of the same old fodder-filled bullshit where Daredevil's in a dark warehouse fighting some no-name ninja character. Nobody cares, man. No one wants to see that. Anyone who knows the Daredevil mythology knows that it's absolutely stocked with good villains. That's the whole premises, and like I said, the foundation for the character. Let me tell you something. When Stan Lee picked up the character in the mid-60s, he had been an earlier property. Not necessarily the blind Matt Murdock version. At least I don't think he was. I know he wasn't Matt Murdock, and I don't believe he was blind. It was Lev Gleason's publications, who had a lot of great Golden Age characters, some of which licenses expired, and they were picked up by other properties, like how Stan Lee got a lot of his characters. To a degree, I mean, Challengers of the Unknown doesn't have that same element to it, but there was a Fantastic Four before the Fantastic Four. Hey, look at this Daredevil cover, and this is Golden Age stuff right here. You get 10-cent comics. When bondage ruled the day. Look at that cover, huh? They're giving this broad cement shoes. Anyhow, when Stan Lee and a group of these guys, some of the, what would you call them? The founders of the comic book industry as we know it, got together and did a whole reconstruction on Daredevil. And you know what? This Daredevil still exists under a different name. It's published by Dynamite, and it's called the Project Superpowers. They're actually on their 2nd volume right now as we speak, in stores now. But see, the original Daredevil mythology from the Marvel standpoint, which came out in the mid-60s, was loaded with villains. And the whole entire thing penciled by, or created by, besides Stan Lee, some of the all-time greats, Jack Kirby, Bill Everett, John Romita Sr. We talked about his kid earlier. The great Wallace Wood and Gangster Joe Orlando. Here, we'll run through it right now. Daredevil number 1, 1967. Look at that. Does that not look like fun or what? The beginning of Marvel's best Silver Age mythology starts right here. Elektra appears in the 2nd issue, known typically today as a Spider-Man villain. And you get good old Leland Owlsley, the attorney. You know, the real criminal crime lord appeared right here in number 3. And then in issue 4, everybody's favorite, the Purple Man. Real definitive Daredevil villain created by Joe Orlando, who also was featured highly in my House of Mystery documentary. If you want to go check that out. All that juicy stuff is right here. You get 100 pages for $5 and who reads everything anyway? Thus, big things were happening at Marvel when it comes to a real rogues gallery. Something that Netflix, like we went over, foolishly ignored. Now they want you to sign the petition to bring this bullshit back. When that petition, they need to wipe their ass with it and spray it with gasoline. I'll drop a match on it. Nobody who knows anything about what the truth of Daredevil wants anything to do with your Daredevil Netflix snooze fest garbage. The Matador appeared in issue number 5. And I want to say this is the first issue Wallace Wood did inks on, might have done breakdowns. And right here was Wallace Wood's first issue, The Master, mostly known for his science fiction work at EC Comics. Right here, Mr. Fear. First appearance of Mr. Fear. And I suppose right there, he doesn't look all too scary. But as I showed you earlier, what this dude becomes is sort of like, I can't think of what is it, antithesis, sort of like an opposite to Doctor Doom, a more junior version, but a perfect character for any type of Daredevil cinema. One that should have appeared when you did 40 fucking episodes and brought us this absolute bullshit. Our trip down memory lane continues. Like we said, 6 was the first Mr. Fear. Also featured one of his henchmen, Ox. Ox is later known for being part of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. Issue 7 takes Daredevil underneath the water to Atlantis, refeatures Submariner in one of his more appropriate Silver Age appearances, considering the fact that Wally Wood did all the pencils and all the inks through issues 6 through 9, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Issue 8, oh yeah, that's right, Stilt-Man comes into play. Now check this dude out. You want an awesome villain who's got Silver Age written all over him? Look no further than the Stilt-Man. And even if you rewind this video, I referenced it earlier when I was saying something. I threw up the credit page for this issue where it said, oh, it's right here. I had that up earlier, just that page in the middle, because I knew the Stilt-Man was coming. And even if though he's like unlogical or something that's going to be pretty hard to do with the Netflix budget, you could do some sort of reference to it or animation type. Have him show up for the first 10 minutes of one episode. Give the guy some love, okay? And by not respecting all this is why people like me and many others hate your stupid soap operic Netflix Daredevil garbage. 8 was the first appearance of Stilt-Man. How about this, Netflix? Let's take Matt to Europe with an old college buddy or something. Somebody writes him or some broad or something, and let him get trapped in Cougar's castle. Okay, just like issue 9 on the right side of your screen there. Kruger's killer castle, full of dungeon traps or booby traps and dungeon doors. You know, use some medieval castle to break down a couple episodes where you could also feature the Matador waiting for him in the arena inside of the middle of the castle. I mean, there's so much you could do with this character. And we're only at the 9th issue, and you see how much is there? And all that, none of that was, for the most part, even touched upon. Issue 10, you get the first appearance of the Anti-Men. Little shout out to the terrible trio from the Golden Age years, later Golden Age years of Batman. And then you get the first appearance of the Organizer. And I believe the Organizer is also the Plunderer. Or he's later maybe called the Plunderer, because in issue 12 and 13, Jack Kirby shows up, gives us this unbelievable 3D Will Eisner shout out of a cover when they do The Secret of Khazar's origin, who was a big Marvel or then timely Golden Age character. This might even be his first reappearance into the, the Marvel, the Silver Age. 14, you got whoever this dude is, Multi-Man or something. And there's good old Ox, who we showed you earlier. He was on the cover as one of Mr. Fear's henchmen. 16, John Romita Sr. shows up. We already talked about his kid and his historic Punisher run. And we'll boomerang back around to John Jr. in a minute. And then there he is in issue 18. The Gladiator shows up. There's your Melvin Porter. Okay? Not that dude at the sewing machine that we keep seeing. Issue 19, he battles the underworld. The good old Owl returns in issue 20. Issue 25, you got the Leapfrog. Do you see what I'm saying? How historic and rich the original Silver Age Daredevil mythology is, that guys like Stan Lee and Wallace Wood must be rolling over in their graves watching this Netflix dumpster fire, garbage juice soaked mess, an absolute insult to the mythology. Or how about the Jester? Nobody laughs at the Jester, who first appears in Daredevil issue 42. And then finally in issue 131, Marvel's #1 assassin finally appears, Bullseye. And we'll come back around to Bullseye in a minute, but this is the book right here that everybody who's a fan of comics should have knowledge of, or read, especially if you're going to do a goddamn Daredevil television show and run it 3 seasons, and none of you bothered to pick up the original Daredevil omnibus. This is like issue 1 through 20 or something. It might go all the way into Leapfrog, I'm not sure. But anyways, you see my point. It's all collected right here. And none of them bothered to pick it up. And it's just absolutely, like I said, disgusting and downright derelict. That's Netflix's Daredevil. But over here, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. 15, I want to say late 70s, that's the first prototype of Bullseye, or the character who became Bullseye. Because I believe this dude dies at the end of this comic right here. But that's the first technical prototype appearance of our main man right there. One of the only guys who can actually get away with white boots and still look like a badass. So when it comes to Bullseye, there's a lot of different reading people can do. Bullseye's Greatest Hits, where they talk about his history as a pitcher, something I don't think Netflix touched on, period, if I remember it correctly. And that's another thing. He's a sociopath, a psycho, a crazy lunatic. He has no feelings. So why did they have Bullseye having these flashbacks about his feelings and what made him the way he is? That's not Bullseye. Okay? He has no feelings. He's a sociopath. They don't feel anything. And what you're looking at right here, courtesy of Frank Miller, is one of the high points, bullet points in Bullseye's history, where they reenacted it pretty well in the movie, especially when they used the dialogue line for line, him and Elektra on the rooftop. You're pretty good. But you see me, I'm magic. Throws an ace of spades card. Catches her right in the neck. Picks her up, gives her a smile. And for my next trick, and impales Elektra on her own side. All courtesy of issue Daredevil 181. Believe it or not, one of the first comics I ever got as a kid. Just because when I started flipping through, I was like, man, this guy's awesome. Just kind of funny to think back. One of the original comics I bought is one of the most historically important as far as storylines are concerned in the whole Daredevil canon. I picked that out as a kid. So anyhow, without beating a dead horse anymore, I've went on pretty long. The dumbest thing you can do with Daredevil and Bullseye is have Bullseye show up and wear the Daredevil costume. I mean, is that not what would you call it, costume department cop-out if there ever was one? And then they present us this in the trailer with sneaky flashback, sneaky visual sequences, so everybody thinks this is Bullseye the way they showed it. Oh no, they're not going to save this for a future storyline. You know, where Daredevil's running around the city, or somebody's running around the city in a Daredevil costume and you don't know who it is, which would make a lot more sense than already knowing who it is and making your whole costume department look like a bunch of dipshits. And as far as this costume right here is concerned, this is blown way out of proportion also. It originally appeared in Frank Miller's Return to Daredevil, where him and John Romita Jr. teamed up and essentially presented Daredevil's secret origin with a flashback to what happened to Matt prior to him getting the costume in the first place. It was just a mini-series. The original Man Without Fear right here, I think it was a 5-parter, and that costume only shows up at the end of 4 and maybe like 20 pages in issue 5. So it's not like it has this very pertinent history. It was just sort of like a little bystander series that was pretty decent from what I hear. And then they had to, flesh it out and use it for an entire season, which doesn't make any sense to begin with, especially considering the fact that at the end of Daredevil Season 2, if you remember, he learned a dumb thing to do was to disassociate himself, Daredevil, and all that Daredevil is from his friends and family. So when Season 3 starts, he's doing it all over again, hiding from everybody and switching his costume. I mean, there's the real Kingpin right there, and we'll leave it at that. It's a decent series to check out, as is the Frank Miller stuff, the original stuff that everybody always references, because it's such another climactic bullet point in Matt's history. These 3 books right here, you can probably find the 3 trades. I found all 3 for under $25 with shipping, but the hardcovers are really nice. Real high definition looking pages and whatnot. I settled for the trades. The first volume here, just Daredevil Visionaries, Frank Miller. The first volume is just his art. It's issues 158 through, I want to say 167 or 168. He doesn't do the writing, he just draws it. And that's where they introduce or reintroduce Deathstalker, as we said before. And then volumes 2 and 3, Miller does both the pencils and the and the words. He does the prose. He writes it and illustrates it, and it's just kind of a high point in the history of Daredevil. We already went over Man Without Fear, that 5-part miniseries, and in between that, Miller has one, Born Again, another classic Daredevil series by Frank Miller, who really set the bar high, because without him and all the Silver Age beginnings that we went over, there wouldn't be no Netflix's Daredevil. So with all that being said, I hope y'all understand that the true origin of Daredevil and him being this far-out superhero that he is simply because he takes down super villains. That's why he's a superhero, not just a hero, okay? And when you're doing a 40-part episode show and you don't really present any of that, you failed miserably. So I hope I sent y'all in the right direction. Throw me a sub if you want more videos like this. I'm winded, I'm out of breath, and I'm calling it a night. Fivefold Understanding YouTube. The saga continues.